Alright, we're back. Okay, talking about the pituitary gland and the hypothalamus. Like I said, the pituitary produces a lot of things, but the hypothalamus actually regulates the pituitary gland activity. Okay, and it regulates it through hormones and action potential. So the hypothalamus shows characteristics of both a endocrine gland and of a nervous system organ, because it acts as an endocrine gland in that it produces hormones, and it acts as an part of the nervous system in that it produces action potentials. Okay, action potentials. So it's got an electrical function, basically, in the nervous system, and it acts as an endocrine gland in that it produces hormones.
That's hormones? How did you make that?
Okay. Alright, so let's look in the body, inside the skull, and we'll look at the pituitary gland. Okay, we can find the pituitary gland right here. Okay, pituitary gland is found right behind which bones in the skull? Okay, that's question number 2. Behind which bones do you find the pituitary? Okay, behind which bones do you find the pituitary? Alright, so we're going to look at the hypothalamus and the pituitary glands. Okay, main thing is here with this slide, practice with it a little bit. Be able to find the structures that you're looking for in this model. Okay, it's able to be able to find the hypothalamus, okay, which you see right here, in this model. Not just be able to find it when it's highlighted. Okay, the infundibulum right in there. Okay, the lower portion right in there. Pituitary gland itself, it's a little round little peanut situated around this bone right here. Oops, I almost told you, but I'm not going to. Alright, and we see the sella turcica that goes around it, and that sella turcica is part of what bone? Remember when we studied the bones in A&P 1? That's kind of an important area, the sella turcica, because it is the home of the pituitary gland. Okay, the hypothalamus and pituitary, we look at a few more images there. Those are thrown in basically so you can see it in a couple different ways. Basically, these 3 images were on the previous slide, whereas we see those 2 are in the form of a CT. Okay, so you can see it in different ways through the CT version. Okay, pituitary gland. Pituitary gland is basically 2 glands within itself. It is composed of an anterior and a posterior portion. Okay, the anterior portion on the front side, the pituitary gland, is responsible for neurophysis. Okay, and it develops from the floor of the brain and connects to the hypothalamus by the infundibulum. Okay, and the anterior, or excuse me, I was talking about the anterior when I was supposed to be talking about the posterior. Excuse me on that one. Posterior has the neurophysis, okay, and it develops from the floor of the brain. The anterior pituitary is an adenohypophysis. Okay, it develops from the roof of the mouth. Okay, think about that, the roof of the mouth, and it's in that area. Okay, posterior pituitary develops from the floor of the brain, connects to the hypothalamus, whereas the anterior pituitary develops from the roof of the mouth. Okay, looking at the anterior and the posterior pituitary. Okay, anterior pituitary, okay, the area highlighted in the top left hand screen there, and then we see the posterior pituitary down below in the image. It is on the right side. Okay, the infundibulum. Okay, the infundibulum is the area that is right above the main part of the pituitary gland. Okay. All right, hypothalamo-hypophyseal portal system. The hypothalamo-hypophyseal portal system. That's really a mouthful. It connects the hypothalamus and the anterior pituitary. So what does the hypothalamo-hypophyseal system do, or hypophyseal portal system do? Connects the hypothalamus and the anterior pituitary. Okay, anterior pituitary. Let's look back at that. Okay, anterior pituitary. It is the adenohypophysis. Okay, so adenohypophysis. We find that in the word there after the hypothalamo-hypophyseal portal system. Okay, hormones are produced in the hypothalamic neurons. Okay, hypothalamic neurons. So it's produced in nerve cells. Okay, and through the portal system, the hormones inhibit or they will stimulate hormone production in the anterior pituitary. So the hypothalamo-physeal portal system works on the anterior pituitary and is regulated by the hypothalamus. Okay, the hypothalamo-hypophyseal tract, okay, connects the hypothalamus and the posterior pituitary. Okay, looks very, very similar. Okay, it's going to connect the posterior pituitary. Okay, and the hormones are produced in the hypothalamic neurons, and here they move down the axons of the tract and are secreted from the posterior pituitary. Okay, all right, does that sound right or not? Okay, through the portal system, we look at the anterior. Through the portal system, hormones inhibit or stimulate hormone production in the anterior. Okay, here in the posterior, the hormones move down axons, okay, of the tract and are secreted from the posterior pituitary. So the fact that it uses axons rather than just stimulating hormone production, okay, shows that it's moving a slightly longer distance and it's moving down a nerve fiber. Okay, so here we see the hormones of the hypothalamus. Okay, there's a hormone called the GHRH. It is the growth hormone, releasing hormone. Okay, and it is a peptide structure, and it targets the anterior pituitary cells that secrete growth hormone. Okay, and the response is it increases growth hormone secretion. Okay, growth hormone inhibition, okay, is produced by small peptide in the anterior pituitary cells that secrete growth hormone, and it causes decreased growth hormone secretion. TRH, thyrotropin releasing hormone. Thyrotropin releasing hormone is a small peptide, and it is an anterior pituitary cell that secretes thyroid stimulating hormone, TSH, and increased TSH hormone secretion is the response. Okay, you can go through the list as well. Make sure you know those. Okay, hypothalamic regulation of the anterior pituitary. Okay, here we get stimuli from the nervous system. It increases or decreases the amount of hormones releasing or inhibits hormones from neurons of the hypothalamus. Okay, releasing hormones and inhibiting hormones then pass through the hypothalamo-physeal tract to the anterior pituitary. And once they pass to that area, then they are at the area where they are releasing hormones and inhibiting hormones, leave the capillaries. Either the releasing hormones or the inhibiting hormones leave the capillary beds and then bind to membrane-bound receptors and stimulate the release of hormones. Okay, it's represented by the yellow squares that you see there in figure 15.14 in your textbook. Okay, the anterior pituitary hormones, the yellow squares, are carried into the blood to their target cells. Okay, you follow that green arrow and see how it moves to the target cells. Okay, which in some cases includes other endocrine glands. Okay, hypothalamic regulation of the posterior pituitary. It starts with a stimuli within the nervous system. Okay, it will either increase or decrease the action potential frequency of the neurons. Okay, and then action potentials are carried by the axons of the hypothalamic neurons through the hypophyseal tract to the posterior pituitary. The axons of the neurons then store the hormones in the posterior pituitary. Okay, in the posterior pituitary gland, the action potentials cause a release of hormones, the red balls, okay, from the axon terminals into the circulatory system. And then these hormones pass through the circulatory system and influence the activity of their target tissues, shown by the green arrow. So the stimulatory pathway, okay, notice that you have two arrows. In other words, if it's stimulated, it will produce a hormone. Okay, if it's inhibitory, it will not produce a hormone. Okay, more about the hormones of the pituitary gland. The posterior pituitary stores and secretes two polypeptide hormones. The ADH, antidiuretic hormone, promotes water retention by the kidneys, and oxytocin, which promotes uterine contractions during delivery of women. It also causes milk ejection in lactating women. The anterior pituitary, okay, it has several major hormones. Okay, growth hormone, thyroid stimulating hormone, adrenocorticopic hormone, and melanocyte stimulating hormone, luteinizing hormone, FSH or follicle stimulating hormone, as well as prolactin. Okay, so here we see the hormones of the pituitary gland. Those of the posterior only includes two, the oxytocin and the antidiuretic hormone. Okay, and we see that they have varying target tissues. The posterior targets the kidney or the uterus and mammary glands. Okay, so in the posterior pituitary of males, how many places are targeted? Okay, if you have a male individual. Okay, question 3. In a male, how many structures are targeted by the posterior pituitary? That's question number 3. Okay, remember to send your responses to me through email or in another way. Okay, anterior pituitary. Okay, there are several different hormones produced by the anterior pituitary. The growth hormone. Okay. Oh, thank you. Let me open yours too. Okay. That is basically responsible for causing growth of most tissues of the body. So it targets almost all tissues of the body. Okay. The TSH or thyroid stimulating hormone. Okay. It targets the thyroid gland and increases thyroid hormone secretion. Adrenocorticoid hormone increases the glucocorticoid hormone secretion from the adrenal. Okay. MSH. Okay. It targets melanocytes within the skin and increases the melanin production to make the skin darker in color. Luteinizing hormone. Okay, it's a glycoprotein. It targets ovaries in the females and testes in the males. Okay, ovulation and progesterone production in ovaries, testosterone synthesis, and support for sperm cell production in the testes of the male. Okay, follicle stimulating hormone. Okay, it stimulates the follicles in the ovaries of females as well as the seminiferous tubules in the males. It causes follicle maturation, also known as your egg, and estrogen secretion in ovaries, and then sperm cell production is increased within the testes. Okay. Prolactin. Prolactin targets the ovaries and the mammary glands and produces milk in lactating women and increases the response of follicles to LH, luteinizing hormone, and FSH, follicle stimulating hormone. It is unclear the role it would play in males. Okay, growth hormone stimulates growth in most tissues and is a regulator of metabolism. Growth hormone stimulates the uptake of amino acids and their conversion into proteins. The breakdown of those fats and the synthesis of glucose, okay, and the production of somatomedins, the growth hormone that they promote bone and cartilage growth. Okay, along with growth hormone, they will promote bone and cartilage growth. Okay, growth hormone secretion increases in response to low blood glucose, stress, and increase in certain amino acids. And growth hormone is regulated by the hypothalamic hormones, GHRH and GHIH, the growth hormone releasing hormone and the growth hormone inhibiting hormone. Okay, so let's check out some growth hormone right here. Okay, stress and decreased blood glucose levels increase the release of growth hormone releasing hormone, GHRH, and decrease the release of growth hormone inhibiting hormone. Growth hormone releasing hormone and growth hormone inhibiting hormone then travel through the hypothalamo-hypophyseal portal system to the anterior pituitary. Okay, and increase the growth hormone releasing hormone and growth hormone inhibiting hormone act on the anterior pituitary and result in the increased growth hormone secretion. Then the growth hormone will then act on the target tissue, and it shows a list down here in the pink on some of the things that can be shown here. Increases the protein synthesis and decreases protein breakdown, increasing tissue growth. And then the fat breakdown increases glucose synthesis and reduces glucose usage. Okay, and then also increasing growth hormone has a negative feedback effect on the hypothalamus, resulting in growth hormone releasing hormone to be stimulated. Okay. All right, so that was the end